Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holm Podcast. Back here in an episode, Bobby, that reminds me how good the times we are in as Houston Cougar sports fans. It's easy. I think you do it. I think I do it. I think chances are, if you're listening, you do it, to focus on where you think the program should be better, things that haven't been accomplished that you would like to see accomplished. I think that's almost the nature of being human. But I just kind of look at this episode, and in terms of the volume of topics for us, not a huge one. Three sports to talk about in total, two of them who will occupy the majority of the time. But we're about to talk about a Texas Bowl win. I think a night that was very much, if you were there, if you're watching at home, felt like a celebration of this year's Cougar team, of Cougar fandom in general, and the start of Big 12 play for men's basketball. One of those things I think we take for granted, but if you had told me 11 or 12 years ago that, one, this program is going to be in the Big 12, two, this is going to be a Big 12 program that is universally acknowledged as one of the very best. And so we have the beginning of that. We have the Texas Bowl to talk about. I think a couple of pretty exciting main offerings for us tonight, Bobby.
Yeah, man, super excited. What a fun week it's been, and what a fun week it's going to be with Big 12 play starting. So really, or in basketball, sorry. Really looking forward to that. We got some women's basketball to talk about as well, to kind of preview. So, to your point, not a lot of topics and subjects to necessarily hit, but ones that I am beyond excited to talk about.
And of course, we'll mention here at the top, here in the immediate aftermath of the Christmas holiday, Bobby and I often, after some major holidays, have done some supporting art of creators that we like, creators that we consume the content of. If we are, as a podcast, something that meets that description, you don't already do so, please consider going to patreon.com/shpodcast. Even a small amount of money is still very helpful to defray the cost, time, and effort, and just the money to do what we do here on a weekly basis. Access to bonus podcasts, including our last football react pod on the Patreon feed of the season. We got 12 of 13 games this season, including the bowl up there. Stupid Dustin, I know, getting married on Arizona State week.
No,
We had to tolerate that. No, that was
heaven forbid we have fun with our fun.
Heaven forbid. One of the best nights I think we've both had this year. And obviously it was, of course, it was just awesome in our groomsmen cabin watching the closing minutes of that game. So missed that one, but 12 of 13, Bobby and myself, or just myself there. And I think as Cougar men's basketball gets into Big 12 play, more frequency of the Big 12 premium podcast as well. We got another one-off patron podcast we're going to be recording here, actually, in the immediate aftermath of this episode. If any of that sounds good to you, patreon.com/shpodcast. But of course, tonight we're going to kick our offerings off by discussing this past Saturday's Cougar football win in the Kinder's Texas Bowl by a 38-35 final over the LSU Tigers. As I said at the top, it was a night that felt like a celebration of the Cougs. It was a night that showcased the unbelievable resilience of the 2025 version of Houston Cougar football. It did at times showcase the imperfections of this specific teams, but more than that, it was almost an advertisement as to why this team won 10 football games. In the same way that we eventually saw U of H men's basketball evolve from Kelvin Sampson's first couple of NCAA tournament teams to the present times in terms of the talent level, in terms of the operation, and just growing there. You'd hope to see U of H give Willie Fritz and his staff the resources to get even more talented teams, to build teams that are at least periodically capable of really playing for the Big 12 crown in December. But as I said back in kind of 2018, 2019, after over a couple of years, guys like Galen Robinson, Rob Gray, Corey Davis, those guys graduated from the program, that I really hoped that the men's basketball team wouldn't lose that dog mentality. And I would say that applies to Cougar football. I really hope, even as ideally this program gets more talented, ideally as you build more from high school classes and supplementing it from the transfer portal. There's this roster, I would say, more of a portal roster. I hope these future teams don't lose that same dog mentality that this year's team had. Obviously, you had a great game from Connor Wigman. Easily, I would say, his best in a U of H uniform. And he's had some other good ones this season. Great career finales for guys like Dean Connors, Tanner Koziol, and others. Bobby, give me your overall takeaways. And then for one final time this season, actually for the first time doing this about a U of H bowl game, give me your overall play from this Texas Bowl win.
Yeah, man. Just kind of general LSU thoughts to just kind of start, like you said. I said heading into it, I was fully expecting this to be the Houston coming out party. And buddy, we're going to talk about attendance briefly later, but we got that, man. It was just a beautiful performance by the Cougs, and one that I hope can really build upon what this team did this year. You know, I think there was a little bit of concern when that opening kickoff got taken back to the house. I think I texted you and a friend of the pod, Bill, who was also in attendance. I think I just texted you guys LOL. Like, it felt like a very Cougar thing to do, to have this hype, have that big crowd, get excited, and then just come out and just lay an egg on the very first opening kickoff, and then you get stopped, and then you go down and you score, and then LSU scores to go up 14-10, and I think there was maybe
14-0.
5 minutes. 14-0, sorry. I don't know why I said 10. 14-0. And at that point, you just are kind of like, this could get ugly pretty quick, boys. Not having a good time right now. And then you saw the Cougs fight back, and you had that Willie Fritz experience. You know, as I like to say, that is definitely an experience you will get. Which Fritz's teams just, they don't seem to give up. There are times. Have you, like Sam? I'm going to ask you now. Have you felt there was a game where it kind of felt like they just kind of threw in the towel to just kind of be like, all right, this game's pretty much over for us from here. Like maybe the end of that Tech game, but even then, I didn't get that there was a lot of quit. I think there was just a lot of being out talented, and you got punched in the face, and you still I personally felt the guys were still fighting when I went back and watched that game. So can you think of one that you were maybe like, man, it really seemed like they were like, all right, well, let's just go into next week and see what happens.
The only one you could make a case for, I believe, is that Texas Tech game. And even that, I don't think is a clear-cut case. I just think that was a better team than you. Like the defense, for example, from that one, like it won't look like the prettiest defensive performance, but if you watched every snap of that game, the Cougar defense was fighting their ass off from snap one to snap the last. So even that one, I don't think entirely meets that criteria. So I would say no, though you could maybe make it maybe for the offensive side of the ball, and that one just getting your ass kicked by a Texas Tech's defensive front might have done that, but I don't think that any game truly meets that definition now.
Yeah, which is not something we can say about a previous administration that was here. So this game really felt like a true encapsulation of what this Cougar team was this year, and I think that's a really fitting kind of way to end the season. Now, in terms of an overlooked play, I'm going back to the second touchdown drive that the Cougs had. The Cougs were driving and get into first and goal from the 10, which isn't my favorite first and goal. You know, you'd rather have like first and goal from the 7. Like that just seems like that's much better. And then you get hit with a false start. It's now second and goal from the 15. And really kind of from there, you wouldn't blame Fritz for kind of playing for a field goal there. Hey, let's get our 3. Let's not go too stupid here. A field goal's okay there. A touchdown kind of changes the game. On the 15, Connor Wigman runs for 11 to set up third and goal from the 4. I think if you pick up 2 there, 3 there, I think your third down play looks a lot different. I think that fourth down, you're probably kicking the field goal there. When he gets it into third and goal from the 4, you're now at a point where even if you don't score the touchdown that you ended up scoring on that third down, you may go for it there on fourth down. So that to me is a very overlooked play. I think there's a huge difference between 14-10 versus 14-14. So that's why I chose that play, but it's going to be that second down scramble by Connor Wigman there to pick up 11 to set up a third and goal from the 4.
My overlooked play was one where, Bobby, I feel like I finally matched you for a truly overlooked play that I can make a good case for being impactful, and also one that I would imagine not very many people who watch this game would vividly remember. I actually meant to bring this up on the premium pod, but I got sidetracked on another point, as sometimes can kind of happen when you're doing a solo podcast
Solo.
kind of thing. But I picked the U of H kickoff immediately after the drive where the Cougs scored the touchdown to tie the game at 14. Obviously, nobody who watched this game would forget the Cougs' specific troubles with kickoffs, especially in the first half. But this was an instance where LSU actually gave the Cougs a bit of a get out of jail free card. LSU upman Deshaun Spears. You might remember this one. I had a good vantage point in this one because I was in kind of the corner near one of the end zones. I was a couple sections over from the Spirit of Houston. He caught it right as it looked like it was about to go out of bounds, if you'll remember that one, on his own 27-yard line, giving LSU a slightly worse field position than if they would have allowed it to go out, and U of H would have gotten the kick out of bounds penalty there. This ended up being the possession, I believe, where LSU turned the ball over on that Rook Brown forced fumble. And to me, I picked this almost less about LSU in this situation getting a slightly worse field position, as I kind of chose as an illustration of the Tigers playing sloppier football than the Cougars. And for not the first time this season, the Cougs getting an edge to win a relatively close margin game by being the cleaner, more disciplined team, which was something we'd really hoped to see Willie Fritz teams do when he took this job, and something his teams were known for doing historically, maybe not something we had seen as much in the program. Even when U of H had some good seasons, it didn't feel like they were good seasons that were as much of a direct result of UH being the more disciplined team. And that was the case this season. And I think this was one example of it being the case on Saturday night. So that's why I picked that specific kickoff.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great one that I didn't remember until you said it, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that ball was clearly going
I
out
just remember
of
saying to
bounds."
my dad, like, why did he catch that? I mean, thanks for catching
Yeah.
it. But why did you catch that, dude?
Yeah, I was like, okay, I remember that. No, that's a great answer there.
I believe the guy that updated call was Deshaun Spears, who I think was responsible for at least one of their face mask penalties on defense as well. So
Mhm.
if I remember that correctly, not the best night from Mr. Spears. We'll lead with the Cougar offense tonight. A really good performance, among the very best of the current season. I can acknowledge at the top that LSU is missing two pretty enormous players in the back end in the form of all-everything quarterback Mansour Delane and the only slightly less all-everything former Cougar and current, or I guess now soon to be former LSU safety AJ Halsey, neither of whom played in this football game. No big surprise there, but I believe it's also worth acknowledging LSU is in such a different stratosphere in terms of how well they paid their roster than the Cougs, and the SEC just loves to hype itself up as this level of football that is so far and away superior to all of the others in Division I FBS football that, quite frankly, Bobby, I don't care that they're missing key guys. It's context. It's context that's worth acknowledging here at the top, at least momentarily, but to me, it's not the kind of convenient cudgel that LSU and SEC honks can just deploy to hand wave away. U of H's offense absolutely wearing LSU's defense out. And LSU defense, mind you, that has retained its defensive coordinator for the new staff, will probably retain at least some of the guys we saw on the field Saturday night. So great offensive effort. Obviously, a number of great individual performances within that great team effort. Bobby, where do you want to start with talking about this offensive performance?
Yeah, to your point, the first line in my notes here is to any LSU fan who for some reason has stumbled across this podcast,
Thank you for the
we
listen.
know that yeah, thanks for the listen, but also we know that you didn't have two of your best DBs and blah 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 blah. Like we know that. Okay, fine, whatever.
Weeks at
What
linebacker, fine.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I loved what this offense did. You saw Wigman go 27 of 36 with 4 touchdowns. LSU, to again your point, loves to tell us, and the SEC in general loves to tell us how deep their rosters are and how much better they are than every other school in every other conference in terms of how deep their rosters are. Buddy, if you want to say that your second team could beat a Big 12 team, they didn't, right? Wigman goes 27 of 36, 4 passing touchdowns. The run game really struggled early. That kind of first drive, you ran the ball. I want to say you picked up that one first down on like a 7-yard pass to Kozial. I'm remembering all this off the top of my head. It may have even been a
That's why I
9-yard
remember as
pass.
well.
It was like a 6 or 7 yard, and then
It
you
was for the
just
first down though. Yeah.
yeah. And so you just tried to keep running it, and it just didn't work. But in true Willie Fritz Slade-Nagel kind of um in their kind of way that they run their offense, they kept running it. I can't remember who it was that we played. It may have been Arizona State, where our guest was like, "Man, if you are willing to be patient with the run game and take 3 yards every so often,
It was
like
ASU. You're
you got
right.
a good yeah, it was ASU. You got a chance at winning this game, and we saw that happen with the Cougs here, right? If you're willing to take 2 or 3, there's a good chance that it busts open eventually for you. And you kind of see that with the running statistics that you saw there. 46, 201, 46 carries for 201. That includes 3 sacks, so I'll take 43 for 198. You averaged 4.4 yards per rush. If I had told you just like after the game, hey, the Cougs actually rushed for 4.4 carry, that really kind of feels like that wasn't the case, because you probably remember a lot of the early carries, and it just felt like we never could figure it out. But Dean Connors ran for 126 yards. If for some reason you want to take away the 35-yarder, which sometimes I'll do because it's an explosive play, but that explosive 35-yard run was like the game-clinching touchdown. So it's hard to say that it was like a
That was a
garbage time or something.
20-yard touchdown run.
Oh yeah, 20-yard touchdown run. Sorry, but he had that 35-yarder. It's still just under 100 yards. Like Dean Connors had a day. Wigman goes 13 of 56. It really felt like Connor was able to pick up the yards when he needed to pick up the yards. Like I don't recall them like really. It's like they tried to establish the run with him, and it didn't exactly work. But when he needed 4, Connor got 4. You know what I mean? And so I thought that was really really interesting, and just a good thing to see. And we are keeping Connor Wigman, and you're keeping Amari Thomas, but you do have a lot of talent to kind of fill, not to go deep into next year or anything like that. But I have a lot of faith in this coaching staff to find talent. Look what they did with the massive flip in the offensive line this year. I'm not saying this offensive line was the best line in Division One or in the Big 12 or anything like that, but they went from noticeably the worst to like, hey, they're pretty good.
I remember there was a first quarter play where Wigman missed the open man. We might text each other afterwards. I want to say that was actually on the first touchdown drive. Could have been the second, but I'm pretty sure it was the first. And why I remember it is that it was this notable exception, this notable outlier, and otherwise really outstanding game. And after that play, certainly, I can't think of any other passes where Wigman didn't either put the ball in the right spot or at least not put it in a dangerous place. I mean, this was, I think without a doubt, Wigman's best game at taking care of the football in addition to everything else he did well on Saturday night. But you can't tell the full story of his success without noticing that it was downstream from really good offensive line play in front of him for almost the entirety of this game. Because there have been past games this season where Connor's ability to move around in the pocket made the sack total allowed look even better than maybe the offensive line performance deserved. There was probably also a couple of games where the ledger showed 2 or 3 sacks allowed where the O-line maybe played better than the box score would make you think. But this is a game where both good things happened. Connor Wigman showed consistent, good pocket awareness. The Cougar O-line gave him the time he needed to get the ball where he needed to get to on the field. I think you're 2 for 2 there and great things happening. Didn't allow a sack all game, and we're good value for that. It wasn't like, oh, you didn't allow a sack and Connor had 3 or 4 just really serious near misses, or just you were very fortunate to have that happen. I mean, there's a little sad irony there because you now have this offensive line with a full season of playing together, and as O-lines often do after a number of games playing together, they look like a more cohesive unit, but now you have to replace a few of those guys after the season. With co-sign everything you said about the staff really doing a good job. And as realistic as a situation as UH is, flipping your absolute worst unit to one that was able to sustain one of the most improved offenses in the country. And I'll try to focus my effort more on the fact that we finally got to see a really good all-around performance from this offense. It was Connor slinging the ball around. It was the O-line blocking in the run game and keeping the pocket clean for Connor. This was actually one of the least vertical passing performances by the numbers that we've seen from the Cougs this season at Wigman. But that's not negative. It was an incredibly good job by Wigman at taking what the LSU defense was giving in front of him. I think the wrong approach here would have been to just go vertical with no regard to what was working or what your opponent was showing on defense. And the short to medium pass range game was working so well that I think abandoning that would have been cutting off your nose to spite your face, so to speak. I mean, it was a classic good 2025 Cougar offense rushing performance because it wasn't the most eye-popping, but you were patient and it mostly got the job done. And you could see how that persistent pounding early bore fruit in the bigger rush plays later in this game. The 35-yard Dean Connors run that was huge in that third quarter touchdown drive coming off LSU answering you to tie it 21-21 out of halftime, where you really needed a response there. And of course, the huge Connors touchdown run at the end and that on the final drive to really ice this game and put you up 38-28, really as much as any one individual play that really won it for you at the end. We also saw a lot of Amari Thomas and Tanner Koziol in the short to medium passing game, something that we expected or hoped we'd see from those two players coming into this season, and certainly saw a lot as this season bore itself out. I mean, coming out of UAB, Thomas in his 2 years there was really more of a high volume targets, move the sticks, not huge yards per catch kind of receiver. And if anything, this season saw him evolve into a bigger play guy, higher red zone targets kind of receiver, which I think shows both Thomas's development and that the Cougar offense gave him a much better situation than his last program did. You also saw Koziol's ability to be a super high volume, move the sticks target, which we saw in spades in his 3 years at Ball State and saw it on display all season, and certainly one last time saw it on display Saturday night. That catch in the end zone on the final first half touchdown drive, classic Tanner Koziol. A reminder that this guy absolutely should be playing on Sundays next fall as a tight end. And his performance will rightly get billing below what Thomas did, what Koziol did, what others did. But I want to shout out redshirt freshman receiver Kobe Young, who I think will be a guy to watch in this group in the big picture. He had an 11-yard reception on that first touchdown drive. He had the 15 tacked on for the face mask, which set the Cougs up deep in LSU territory. And ended up being, as I said, the first touchdown drive. Had a 21-yard reception later in this game. I think he's, again, guy to watch in the long term there, along with Amari Thomas, along with hopefully Stephon Johnson Jr. getting a medical red shirt and being back, and anyone else in this receiver group next season. Really also can't say enough good stuff about Dean Connors, who was playing his final U of H game on Saturday. I think there were a few games this season where his numbers weren't pretty because he was running into non-existent holes or even running into small crowds of players right before the line of scrimmage when the run blocking really wasn't working for the group up front. But this was a classic Dean Connors game. Some tough runs for short yardage with, I think, multiple game-changing runs. The two that we've mentioned specifically now multiple times, I would say, being the highlights. You didn't see Connor Wigman do as much as some other games running the ball, but he still affected the game positively for the Cougs in the run game. The one play I think that really comes to mind, 14-yard run for a first down. I believe that was in the first touchdown drive of the game. He did enough.
That sounds right.
He did enough that LSU's defense had to respect the run and could be there for him, and I think the offense performed better for it. My favorite rushing stat from this one, Connors and Wigman combined for 29 carries on Saturday night. Bobby lost a grand total of 3 yards on those 29 carries. That'll work. And it might not seem like a significant stat, but it illustrates how much better, really on the whole of this year, this Cougar offense was at running the ball in an efficient manner. Because there were so many offenses in the years preceding this ones where it'd just be like, you have a good run at times, then it would be just liable to lose 5 or 6 yards, either because of poor blocking or poor play design or something like that. I mean, wasn't always perfect, wasn't always the most explosive, but this year, and certainly displayed on Saturday night, was a much more effective run game than anything we've seen in recent preceding seasons. I mean, that offense in the Texas Bowl was the offense you and I got on here and hoped we'd see in the preseason. Somewhat run first, but effective in the pass game. And even as the second most explosive offense that took the field in this football game, by far the more consistent and effective one. And I think that, along with some key defensive stops and an overall maybe less sterling performance on that side of the ball, and just playing the cleaner game overall, are why you and I are sitting here talking about a 10th win to close this season. It wasn't perfect. There were series here and there that I thought you either fell too in love with the pass or too in love with the run, or you just got a little cute, which I would say describes that fourth quarter 7-minute drive where you had to settle for a field goal but you really can't have any serious complaints from a game where this offense managed 6 scoring drives, because hand up, I didn't expect we'd do that when we previewed this game. So I can only be really happy with that offensive performance.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned was the kind of lack of vertical passing game there. Not that it was necessarily a bad thing, but one of the big things, and we'll talk about this when we get to the defense, is you could definitely see the difference in SEC speed versus Big 12 speed here. You saw that a lot. And like I said, that kind of segues me into defense. Are we good to move on to defense, Sam?
Let's do it, buddy.
All right, well, you got to say this was kind of an ugly performance from the defense. I'm not gonna bash a bowl game in which you won too much. I'm not gonna go too hard in it, right? Because as a podcast you and I listen to, Split Zone Duo always says you can make a podcast if it tells you what you want to see, then you will take it as good or as bad if it
I was gonna say the bowl win that suits our agenda, I believe, is their exact wording for that.
The bowl result, how does it suit your agenda? So I'm gonna try and take a little bit of the high road there and not bash it too much. But
I get to be the negative one for once. Hell yeah.
Oh no, look, I'm gonna get negative here.
I'm not to be clear, I'm not that negative.
Yeah, this LSU offense was a bad offense coming into this game. One in which our guest was kind of like, yeah, I don't see us scoring. Like, we haven't scored more than 3 touchdowns, and it hasn't been good. And I see the Cougar defense, like, shutting us down. Like, he seemed so downtrodden about what this offense was going to be. And instead of shutting them down like that, you made Van Buren, their quarterback, look like a Heisman contender at times. The secondary could have been a little bit better, Sam. Multiple times we had DBs that were just burnt toast out there. Just absolutely burnt, got beat deep. They were running that tunnel screen. There were like 3 times they kind of ran that wide receiver tunnel screen where our DBs just couldn't keep up. Like, you saw a big difference in speed out on that field, and it wasn't a great performance by the secondary. They did good enough. But I don't want to be all negative. The defensive line, I thought, played really, really well. They had 4 sacks. You saw the defensive line hold the Tigers to 77 yards rushing, which I didn't. Whenever you think of like LSU and what their offense is going to be, I would have expected them to run the ball pretty well, and they just didn't against our defense. Our defense and the defensive line did a very, very good job. Shout out Eddie Walls. He had 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and another tackle for loss. Just a great performance by him overall. So, Sam, what did you see in the defense there?
Like you, I don't have as much nice to say about the defense as the offense, even as somebody who feels very good overall with the performance. I'll at least lead my defensive thoughts with some positivity. I said it a few moments ago. You don't win this game without some critical stops from your defense. And that same defense really, I think, stepped up early to allow the Cougar offense to get things going from a 14-0 deficit that I think we can agree was very little on the plate of the defense. Like, you have the touchdown there, but LSU had a very short field on that second touchdown. It was mostly that deficit, the product of poor special teams play early. So you don't want to put that on them so much. It was really cool to see Rook Brown, a guy who all season has really had a nose for the big play, forcing a turnover in the first half, coming immediately off of a really gorgeous, perfectly executed cornerback blitz and safety by Latrell McCutcheon. Blitz and sack, excuse me. I don't know why I said safety. By Latrell McCutcheon. We knew coming in LSU had one of the worst rushing offenses in the country, and going up against a pretty consistently good Cougar run defense, that bore itself out. LSU didn't really get anything positive in the run game other than a couple of early Michael Van Buren quarterback draws. I think notable that LSU had 4 empty possessions in their first 6, with one of those being the second touchdown of the game on an extremely short field. That's notable. But also, I wouldn't be honestly recapping this game if I didn't note that LSU's pass game, which since Michael Van Buren took over as starting quarterback, had been one of the least explosive in the entire country, broke out a ton of big play against the Cougar defense. Like you said, though, I thought the defensive front, including that cornerback blitz by McCutcheon, did a good job creating pressure and getting home at times against Van Buren. He certainly looked like the more hassled quarterback of the two that primarily got snaps in this football game. Eddie Walls, great final game in a Cougar uniform. but you can't really sugarcoat the pass defense. You allowed just a categorically non-explosive passing offense with its backup quarterback to do at times whatever they wanted down the field. I mean, it felt like later in this game, once LSU realized that U of H was completely unable to defend their deep ball, their offense was so much better and effective for it. They had 3 different touchdown drives in the second half of 60 or more yards, and they averaged at least 8 yards per play on all of those drives. 2 of them were 10 plus yards per play. I mean, that speaks to a Cougar defense that could not keep LSU from doing most of what they wanted to do in the pass game. But and maybe the stat that reflects this the best was LSU being a combined 8 of 13 on their 3rd and 4th down attempts in this one. And a lot of those were 3rd and medium or 3rd and long. It's not as though they had a run game that was allowing them to stay on the schedule, and that was just you struggling in 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3 situations. They were mostly getting big pass plays on those conversions. So considering that, you would have hoped maybe you could do a little bit better than 8 of 13, even though this defense on the whole this season hasn't necessarily been bad on 3rd down, like some of maybe the defenses that historically have been great at U of H have struggled on that down. We'll add to that SEC speed thing you said. Trey'Dez Green, the tight end at LSU, is a dude. If I was an LSU fan, I'd really be hoping that he's one of the few guys on that side of the ball that sticks around under the new staff. Because I think you put that guy in a good Lane Kiffin offense, we're talking video game numbers here. Even in a league that prides itself on athletes and great defense, I think in a good offense that can actually get this guy the ball in the right spaces. There are not a lot of guys out there in college that can cover Trey'Dez Green. And I think I've called him somewhat on the defensive performance from where I was Saturday night. And I'll reiterate, they did some things that allowed you to win this game. The stop when it was 31-28 after you had that drive where you had to sell for a field goal and you kind of felt like you needed to go punch for punch them on touchdowns. That you got to stop in that spot was really critical. And if you don't give the defense credit for that when you're complaining about the bad pass defense, you're not telling the job or not telling the story.
Absolutely.
You're not doing the job that you and I should be doing here in this podcast, but also any honest assessment of how Saturday night went for the defense would point out that it was not one of the best performances of the season. It wasn't the awesome defensive performance to accompany the awesome offensive performance. Though again, that's not to say, and I don't think you or I are saying this, that they didn't do things that helped you win this football game. They most certainly did. I think what I'm actually most negative on, Bobby, is not the defense. It's the special teams. Because I kept saying to my dad as we watched the game at NRG that it was kind of inexcusable that we don't have a specialist on the roster who could kick it out of the end zone in a climate-controlled stadium the way LSU's did. I mean, even after the opening kickoff return touchdown by Berry and Brown, it's not like the kickoff adventure stopped there. Brown returned at 43 yards on the kickoff off of U of H's first touchdown drive, which mercifully that possession ended with LSU's kicker missing a 44-yard attempt, but he gave him a very short field there. Once again, Liam Doherty had one of his worst games punting the ball, gave LSU great field position off of your empty opening offensive possession, shanked a 21-yard punt. Thankfully, the offense didn't end up needing Doherty come out and do that much in this game. I don't want to overstate one game here. Doherty averaged 44.1 yards per punt on the season. He's only a sophomore, but it was something about this game that didn't go very well. And I would imagine, along with the adventures on kickoffs, Willie Fritz, even as he was very happy and celebrating the joyous aftermath, that guy's a special teams ball coach. He even, I think, made a joke about the kickoffs I saw during like the trophy ceremony. Believe me, that was not far from his mind, even I think being mostly happy after a hard-fought 10th win.
Yeah, man, those special teams were pretty bad. And for a guy who isn't it a tape on special teams, it had to be
special teams, special forces, I believe is what it's called, from when he was at Central Missouri.
That had to be like eating at him. We made a joke with Bill in our group text that like, yeah, we might as well just onside it at this point. Like, just run the onside kick, because that's basically where LSU was getting the ball on special teams anyway. So whenever you do make that kickoff and it's like, oh, it went out of bounds, why didn't he let that go out of bounds? Like, that was a better result. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. The ball going out of bounds was better than LSU getting the opportunity to return a kick.
I hope we find someone in the offseason who can actually consistently kick the ball out of the back of the end zone. That guy's got to be out there.
He's got to be, right?
God bless Zach Yoakum. He's about to have a Bauer MBA and a Notre Dame degree, so he'll do fine in life. He's accomplished more athletically than I would ever dream of being able to do so, but he probably wasn't that guy this year. And I don't like taking shots at the play, but like, I mean, I think the on field kind of kind of said that. I think this was my last overall thought, a fitting game for the 2025 Cougar football team. You didn't run an opponent off the field because this team really didn't do that very often, but when the clock hit zeros, they found a way to win this football game. This game, you could tell, fucking meant something to all of the guys out there in UH jerseys on the field and on the sidelines, and they played like it. And as two guys who were out of town Cougs were able to be there in person, I'm sure I could speak for you in saying that we both really appreciate it. And like I said earlier, I hope there are subsequent teams that present even more problems for opponents than maybe this one did and can win even more convincingly. But I hope this program never loses its edge. I hope the program never loses the mentality that this year's team had in spades and showed it off for one last time in this win.
Yeah, man, this really feels like, I don't want to say like the first year Kelvin Sampson team, because it's not that, but like this really kind of feels like that first NCAA tournament team where you just kind of had a couple of dogs, a top 25 team, and you really set a culture. One of the things Kelvin Sampson talks about a lot is the culture, and a lot of the things, Galen Robinson yesterday on the call of the Middle Tennessee game talked a lot about culture. And I know this is going to sound weird, but you could see, like, I don't want to say that Sampson didn't like um, Holgerson, but you can tell he loves Willie Fritz and what that team does. One, it helps his recruiting because it's good to take recruits to go see good football teams and have cool atmospheres. But it's also like you could just see he really likes having a football coach as his, because if there's one thing Kelvin Sampson is a basketball coach. So you can just kind of see that they're two kind of kindred souls, and you can see how happy it makes Sampson having Fritz here, because he sees a lot in Fritz that he is the basketball equivalent.
Yeah, two ball coaches who started at the small, like Willie Fritz started out, being like the bus driver and stuff like that. Like these are two guys who worked their way up from small college ball. Like the Willie Fritz and Kelvin Sampson didn't get to where they are as really at the pinnacle of coaching in their respective sports by being Division I guys with a lot of, like, they had to work their way there. And so yeah, definitely two kindred spirits there. We're gonna save the full big picture look at the football season that was for our next episode. In fact, we may have a familiar voice join the two of us to discuss that further, and obviously the big talking points, the big needs for the football team going into the offseason and the 2026 season. We'll just note, as we kind of have, that there are some pretty critical players who have signaled publicly that they'll be back. Wigman and Amari Thomas chief among them, but you did have some pretty critical Cougars who will be playing or were playing their final college games on Saturday night. Tanner Koziol, Dean Connors, Carlos Allen, Latrell McCutcheon Sr., Eddie Walls, and that's a pretty incomplete list there. You also have three of your starting O-linemen from this game who were either out of eligibility, or in the case of Dalton Merriman, who I think could have had an additional year, indicated that Saturday was the end of their college careers. So there are holes to fill for Willie Fritz and the staff, either from the portal or from current guys developing into starting material. Though I think the work the staff has done these last two off seasons, finding difference makers in the portal and now being able to sell on-field success and hopefully having more money to spend, I think that can only be a positive for future roster building and future prospects of this team.
Yeah, I like I said earlier, the ability of the staff to find players, I have no reason to question it at this point.
No doubt. I think we've now seen pretty conclusively that this staff can find guys that fit what they want to do in the portal, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that develops, in addition to now having a couple of high school classes and seeing how many contributors you're getting from those ranks as well. Before we leave the topic of football entirely for this episode, one final update of our season head-to-head pick'em, down with the pickness. Bobby won, and kind of fitting, you did it on two picks that were emphatically right, buddy. I hate to glaze you, as the kids say. There were a lot of 6-7 celebrations, which will never be something I get because I was born before 1998. But I think glazing, I understand. Glazing, giving you excessive praise. Bobby's doing the little 6-7 motion here on there. I'm sure the under 25 crowd is just going crazy now in front of their podcast apps or their radio right now. But you got two picks that were really emphatically right. You had the game over of 41.5, which the two teams surpassed by the early third quarter. UH over half a passing touchdown. Didn't mention it. Connor Wigman set the U of H bowl game passing touchdowns record here with 4 and tied the Texas Bowl one as well. Patrick Mahomes had previously been the Texas Bowl single game passing TDs record holder. Your only miss was BYU minus 4.5 in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And even that one, you only missed that one on a hook as BYU won by 4, 25-21. I successfully took the Cougs minus 2.5, but unsuccessfully picked LSU under half a rushing touchdown, which the passing defense, man, you didn't get that until the literal final minute of this game because you kept giving up big pass plays until LSU was at the doorstep and had almost no choice but to like run it in for a touchdown there to cut to 38-35 before the unsuccessful onside late in this game.
Which side note, what an onside kick, by the way. That was such an amazing setup. They did a really good job.
They did. Even better job recovery by the Cougs, but like didn't leave any bullets in the holster metaphorically, LSU. So I can applaud that.
Sorry. Just wanted to throw that out there.
No, it's definitely worth noting. So we still do not know how my non-U of H bowl pick of Utah minus 15.5 is. That game will be kicking off in about an hour and a half, a few miles from where I sit here in Las Vegas, but it's relevant as I can not catch Bobby here. He has a 380 to 355 lead over yours truly. I think the story of the season is I was good at picking the Big 12 games and I think worse than a coin flip when it came to the team props and spread stuff, which understandably we're rating the heaviest here on a Cougar podcast. So my review of the absolutely atrocious, but very well picked album that my co-host selected as my punishment for this one will be coming in the next episode or two, probably next week. I was actually initially planning on listening to one of my 2 flights back home from Houston. But as you know, I just had some sinus stuff and I thought, I think I would only like to torture myself in the ways that I have no control over instead of listening to this on my earbuds while I feel my sinuses get squeezed with a vice as I'm on this plane. We will move on now to Cougar men's basketball, a game to recap and a Big 12 opener to discuss as well. Our most recent game to chew on is a not very beautiful 69-60 win from last night off a week plus break over the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders on Monday night at the Fertitta Center. I think to some degree, the final margin, I'm going to use a big private school word here, so get ready. I think the final margin somewhat obfuscates or tells a different story for how competitive it was later on in the second half. Yes, it was much closer than we would have liked at the beginning, but this was also a 16-17 point game in the final few minutes before the Blue Raiders made some late buckets to get to kind of that 9 point, I think it was like 8 points in the final minute margin. But Kelvin Sampson said in his postgame in no uncertain terms, Sampson said Middle Tennessee played harder than the Cougs on Monday night. And having watched this game in full, because I was flying back home most of the time this happened live, I wouldn't disagree with him one bit there. I did really love the energy and difference making that we saw from Mercy Miller off the bench. And I think it's some really critical second half minutes that mostly coincided with the Cougs finally putting this opponent in too big of a hole for them to get out of. But one of the things we both shouted out in our pretty quick preview of Middle Tennessee last episode was how good they'd been at defending the 3-pointer all season. You saw that Monday night. The Cougs shot well below their season average from deep. That Emmanuel Sharp only took 2 3-pointers in this game should tell you what a good job they did denying a guy with really crazy range anything like a decent open look in this basketball game. Flemings and Uzan were combined 2 of 10 from deep, which I think also illustrate the struggles we saw. You could chalk this up, I think, to multiple things, 2 major categories here. You faced an opponent who's good at defending this specific thing, and you also had an off night shooting the ball that you'll see even very good teams, even last year's team did, that you're just going to have nights where the ball doesn't go in the basket. I do think there were a lot more positives defensively, more so than the offensive end. You forced 19 turnovers. I found myself saying after a lot of Middle's 3-point makes, I don't know if you agree with this, but it just felt like a lot of them hitting tough shots. There weren't as many times where I was just like, man, you gave them a really good look there, as compared to the offense where I was like, okay, like they're defending pretty well, but like just nothing is going down right now. Chris Loof definitely gave you problems on the offensive glass. I think contributed to maybe Chris Senek's worst game since joining the Cougar program. But also the defense did a great job harassing Loof in particular, who was a big man. You can tell he just wasn't really that comfortable handling the ball. You forced him to have as many turnovers as the Cougs' entire team did on Monday night, but not a vintage effort, won't even be close to one of the season's best. And I think, like I told you before this episode, I kind of like that going into our Big 12 opener on the road and against an opponent who I know will be hungry for a signature win against the Cougs, that Samson has a performance that he can do some hard coaching off of. Samson has a performance where he can go into that locker room and be like, that wasn't good enough. Like that simply won't get this team to where it wants to get to this season. And I think we saw some of the things that the very best opponents on the Big 12 schedule are going to exploit. I don't think either of us think that the team's going to run through that schedule entirely unscathed, but I also don't believe this is a game result that should be on the flip side of that treated with outsized importance. Bobby, what did you take away from last night's win over Middle Tennessee?
Yeah, to your point, it wasn't pretty, but it was a win. There was a massive lid on the bucket all game. To your point that you said, we both kind of talked about how the 3-pointer was going, Middle Tennessee State did a good job defending that all year. You kind of were like, was that opponent dependent? Were they, who did they play? Were they good 3-point shooting teams? But yeah, I think the stat, I actually had it written down here that was really interesting, was that Emmanuel Sharp took 2 3-pointers. Like, Emmanuel Sharp will shoot it from Katie if he's open, which means he wasn't even close to open. And they had guys in the face all game. It's not as simple. I don't want it to be as simple as, oh well, the Cougs just weren't making shots. Middle Tennessee State did a lot of good defending on that. The Cougs kind of got beat by Middle Tennessee State in their own game. The Cougs were out rebounded by 2. They shot 6 percentage points lower than Middle Tennessee State. But where the Cougs, won this game was on the turnover. They turned the Blue Raiders over 19 times. I would say the biggest bright spot for me was seeing JoJo Togler come away with 13 points. He's kind of struggled offensively all year, but he had a fairly efficient game. There were a couple of little bunny hop shots that, you'd like to see him make, and they didn't quite fall. But another name that the stat line may not pop out to you, but Ramon Walker, we talked about him in the last episode about how he's kind of a spark plug off the bench. You mentioned Mercy Miller, but Ramon Walker, 3 points, 3 boards, doesn't sound like a lot, but 2 of those were on the offensive side. And one of the things that doesn't show up in the scorebook is your ability on defense, the way you're able to tip a ball back for a rebound, or you tip a pass, something like that. And it felt like Ramon Walker was getting called out quite a bit the other day. So overall, I thought it's an ugly game. You hope that you have more Arkansas in you than you do Middle Tennessee State. This is just kind of a weird matchup. We kind of talked about the fact that their big man may have a good game, because we've kind of struggled against big men at times, a little bit of size. You saw he had a decent game, nothing overly terrifying, but definitely something to just kind of watch going forward.
You mentioned it earlier. Shout out Galen Robinson Jr. did play-by-play on this one in the Cougs ESPN Plus broadcast. In my opinion, sounded like a natural. I do like the regular home ESPN Plus color done by Phi Slamma Jamma era point guard and program alum, one-time assistant Reed Geddes. But I would imagine Reed was very excited that Galen got his opportunity. And I hope that we don't have to wait too long in the future. I believe even the Big 12 ESPN Plus games have a conference crew, so we're probably gonna have to wait till next non-conference season if I had to guess, but hope we don't have to wait too long into next season to hear him call the game, because I thought he did a
great shout out. Great shout out there.
Up next, the Cougs will travel up to the Queen City on Saturday to take on a very familiar foe in the Cincinnati Bearcats. I don't think any UC fan would take issue with me saying that it has been kind of a disappointing non-conference slate for this team, for fifth-year head coach Wes Miller, who's going into a very, very do-or-die season for his job there. Because as much as Cincy football, at least up until the last couple seasons, has had a recent renaissance, that's a basketball school. Like, they love that basketball program. That is, if you gave, I think, most Cincy fans truth serum. I mean, all the history. Bob Huggins was there. Mick Cronin, the consistent run he had there as well. Oscar Robertson winning a championship 50, 60 years ago. Like, it's if you gave them true serum, that's the program that they want to be, like, their flagship, their iconic, most public facing program. And I think why this has been disappointing, you could just look at 5 games in their non-conference slate against either opponents who you would call quality competition or, in one specific case, your hated local rival. In those 5 games, the Bearcats are 1-4 so far, losing the last 4 of those, including the one I kind of just alluded to, a brutal 79-74 loss to crosstown rival Xavier, who's having a really tough first season under Richard Pitino. That you're in the 5th year of this head coach who already doesn't have a great head-to-head record against his rival and still being unable to beat this opponent who looks as ripe for the beating as they've been in their head coach's first year. That has to sting as bad as any recent loss in the series with Xavier. I bet you could trace most of the Cincy fan angst to that one loss as much as anything. But they were also pretty uncompetitive in a loss to Georgia, looked pretty second best to a Louisville team that profiles similarly to the Cougs, playing in Cincinnati, though it wasn't on campus technically. But they did recently get back multi-year starting point guard Jizzle James, who started the season not with the UC program, back for the last few games. And I think the Bearcats have looked better for James's return, but you also can't help but wonder if the reasons he was completely off the team in the first place aren't going to bubble to the surface later this season. They have a ton of size in their front court. UCF transfer Mustafa Tiam, who had a great game against the Cougs last season in Orlando when he was playing for UCF. FAU transfer Baba Miller, which was one of those things I was really intrigued about with this team before the season, Tiam and Miller. And I think dealing with that duo of size and shot blocking ability is going to be one of, if not the biggest challenges that U of H has to solve offensively coming into this game. Shona Baev is a super talent. Wouldn't be surprised if he's a one and done. I think he was Cincy's highest rated recruit to come in since Lance Stevenson almost 20 years ago. Has flashed some really good stuff, though you can kind of tell Cincy has relied on him a bit too much as a scorer. His numbers don't look great shooting the ball as a result. Kirk Risa, my good buddy, is here for a 6th season and doing a lot of the classic things we've come to expect from Krisa, which is mostly shooting 3-pointers at a really low percentage clip against any opponent with a pulse. I mean, you could see pretty clearly why Cincy's struggles have been what they are just by looking at the offensive and defensive efficiency numbers. They're a great defensive team, Bobby. They're the 9th rated defensive efficiency team in all of the country, and yet 211th in offensive efficiency. You don't see a split that wide very often because this isn't a good offensive team, however you slice it. They don't shoot well. They're one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country when they do get to the line. They don't get a lot of offensive rebounds. I will note they're very good at keeping opponents from getting second chances. So that might be something to watch with the Cougars. And they turn the ball over a fair amount, but they defend well. And that's the kind of thing that's giving me at least a little heartburn about this game as a Cougar fan. U of H has obviously had its games this season where it struggled putting the ball in the basket. And if that happens Saturday in a raucous, I would assume completely full Fifth Third arena, this one could be scary, man.
Yeah, this absolutely could get scary when you play a team that is that defensively good. You know, the first line in my notes is it's going to be a defensive battle. For the first time in a long time, you will see the Cougs actually play a team that has a higher defensive rating than the Cougs do on KenPom. The good news is the Cougs are, the Cougs are so much better offensively. To your point, this offense for Cincy is, I don't like to, it's dog shit. Like, it's just,
I don't think any Cincy fan would be like, no.
It's so bad. It's 212th in the country. Exactly what you said. They don't do anything well. They don't get to the line particularly well, and then when they do, they are one of the worst in the country at doing it. They do a good job of not getting blocked, I guess. Like, looking at KenPom, like, okay, that's cool, I guess. So the Cougs should be good in this one, but to your point, it's on the road. This has a classic, like, trap game kind of feel to it to me, just like Middle Tennessee kind of did. Early, when we previewed the season a little bit, this was the game I kind of chose as like, hey, this could be the conference game that's a lot tougher than we maybe expected to be. I don't expect the Cougs to be up by 30, but I would like to see the Cougs look good offensively. If you can show a little bit against the Cincy defense and look good on the offensive side, that really gives me hope that we're seeing more Arkansas versus Middle Tennessee State. So we should be able to shut them down. if they come out and they start to score, I don't want to say you're waving red flags, but you're definitely going, hey, wait a minute, what in the world happened here? They do like to push the pace a little bit. You look at their average possession length; it is 27th in the country. So, it's going to be one of those situations where you're trying to not get trapped into a tempo battle again. But we've played other teams that have a high tempo, and you just really haven't seen the Cougs this year in particular get sucked into that. So, the guy who worries me a little bit for them is a guy you mentioned, Baba Miller. Um, he's got some size. We've shown that size can kind of affect us a little bit. But again, it's not a very efficient offense, so we'll see what actually happens.
Yeah, I think we both singled this game out as kind of the overlooked scary Big 12 game when we did our season preview. But I would say now, having seen this Cincy team play in non-conference, I don't think I am as scared, but don't misinterpret that as I am not going to be more nervous than I should be in the lead up to this game. Like you see, this is a situation where you see teams play up to the opponent. Like that is going to be a raucous building, and if they can get some momentum early, if they can jump on the Cougs a little bit at the start. Not saying the Cougs can't come back and do something, but the crowd gets into it and that starts to snowball. I think that's just something to watch for there. I like that we've seen a couple of up-tempo teams in the last month or so in Florida State and Arkansas, who are both to different degrees teams that will push the pace. You hope it looks a little bit more like Arkansas than Florida State, but you're glad, if nothing else, you were at least exposed to a more frenetic pace of play in the immediate lead up to this one.
Yeah, you mentioned the crowd. I feel a lot better about this game if this is like a Tuesday or Wednesday night game, as weird as
I don't
that
know.
sounds.
I mean, I know school's out right now, but like so much of their student base is at least like within an hour or two drive away, and they'll be on campus for it. And like the fan base on a Saturday, like they're gonna be out there for that one, man.
No,
Like,
that's what I'm saying is I would be less concerned with this game if it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday night game.
yeah.
Yeah, that place is going to be loud on Saturday.
For sure. And we'll close with talking about the Cougar women's basketball program, who will be back in action after their own holiday break. And as we mentioned last week, after talking about a pretty tough opener at West Virginia, the schedule makers did the Cougar women's basketball team exactly zero favors, because after the challenge of going to Morgantown and taking on a top 25 West Virginia team, you get the privilege of hosting the current number 10 undefeated Iowa State at the Fertitta Center tomorrow early afternoon on New Year's Eve. Junior Audie Crooks has to be, I mean, I think where you start talking about Iowa State women's basketball. She's made a good case for herself in the National Player of the Year conversation. Going into this game, she's averaging just a hair under 29 points per game while shooting an astonishing 71.6% from the field, Bobby. And I think even more impressively, as a post player, just a hair under 70% at the free throw line, where opponents are sending her a ton. Fellow junior Addie Brown, the front court, is also a handful. She's averaging 14.6 points, just a hair under a double-double with 9.5 boards. I think simply this might be the best offensive team that the Cougs will see all season, and they turn opponents over a ton. I think the only thing I will note in the Cougs' favor here is that ISU has only played in their 13 games so far this season 3 times away from home, but I don't think that magically makes them a beatable opponent here. I think, like the West Virginia game, you just don't want to leave this game with too much mental scar tissue, because this is always going to be one of those ones on the schedule that I think you just take it as a learning experience, not as any kind of referendum on this year's team at all.
Yeah, you mentioned Audie Crooks. Looking at her stat lines, like 28.9 points per game just does not do justice to the sheer domination that she's done, because she gets pulled a lot from games. You look early on, she played 25, 33, 22, 20, 25, 25, and 22, right? And then in one game versus Valpo, she played 20 minutes and scored 43 points. That's an insane number. You look at games in which she actually played quite a few minutes. She played 30 versus Kansas. She put up 41. She played 36 minutes versus Iowa. She put up 30. Versus Indiana, She played 33 minutes and put up 47 points. This
Crazy.
could get ugly for the Cougs. Sam, I'm going to say this with 100% seriousness, and I want you to tell me if you think I'm being absurd here.
All ears.
Does Audi Crooks outscore the Cougs by herself?
I don't think so, but I think it's closer than we'd like. And I think, honestly, it probably also becomes because like they're up by enough that Bill Fennelly is not going to leave her out there. Like, oh, like I'm gonna risk Audi Crooks getting any kind of injury to try to get 45 points when the Cougs have like 42 or something like that. That's why I say no, but also given the kind of season she's having, it's less patently absurd that I would normally give that question the consideration of.
Right. And then you look.
It's gonna be tough, man. It's gonna be tough.
It's not just Audi Crooks. They have Addie Brown forward, 14.6 per game, 9.5 rebounds a game, 5.5 assists per game. So even if you throw everything at Audi Crooks, they're gonna bring Addie Brown in. This team could be a national championship contender. They look really, really good. And this is going to be a tough game for the Cougs. This is one of those games where you kind of watch for the opponent to kind of see what they do. And it's to your point that you said, it doesn't give you the judgment on what this team is or what it will be in the future. But this is definitely one of those games where you're like, let's just see how we do against a team like this. Like, if you and I both play sports recreationally, it's when you go up against a guy who is like way better than you and you're like, oh, we play a different game, but like you still kind of want to see how you do against him just to kind of see.
So without making this too much about my recreational thing, so I play padel, a racket sport that is kind of a tennis racquetball hybrid. In a recent tournament I played in, my reward, if me and my partner, who wasn't particularly a good match, I think I just played in the tournament because I just wanted to get out there and play my first tournament in like 7 or 8 months. If we had somehow, I think we were against a roughly evenly matched, if not a little bit better team in the first round, our reward would have been to play against a former low-level Chilean tennis pro and a guy who played at Abilene Christian in college tennis 7 or 8 years ago. So I was like, all right, if we find a way to win this, I am going to get 6-0'd. And I thought about that. I'm like, what am I going to go out there and do? And just like my mentality would have been going into that one, just see how many deuce points, see how many 40-40s I can get these guys to. And I think that kind of has to be the Cougs mentality here. I think if you keep it within like 27, 28 points, I gotta be honest, that almost not like feels like a win, but I think we go back here and we're actually talking pretty positively about how the Cougs did in that one.
Agreed.
And unfortunately, you will get no respite from the immediate following schedule as the Cougars will travel to Oklahoma State, take on a Cowgirls team that the Cougs have actually had the number of in recent seasons. If you'll recall, the program's first ever road Big 12 win was at Oklahoma State 2 seasons ago. Last season, your lone Big 12 win period came against an, at the time, top 25 OSU team at the Fertitta Center. But I would say this year's team is even better than the last two, which were both varying degrees of pretty good team. They're just simply a really good shooting and rebounding team. Haley Timmer, a veteran transfer from South Dakota State, has led the way for the Cowgirls offensively. She's averaging just under 16 points and making over half of her three-pointers. Absurd. But they're such a balanced team. 6 different Cowgirls average at least double digits. 7 are at least 9.5 points per game. They have 3 different high-volume three-point shooters who are at least at 36% or better from deep this season. They're an uncommonly good shooting team and almost plus 200. I had to double check the math, Bobby. They're almost plus 200 on the season rebounding against their opponents, which is an extremely tough combo to beat. Like there's some not great non-conference teams on their schedule this season, but they also have some good wins. They also ran a Cincy team that I think has been better than the Cougs on the balance of this season off the court in their Big 12 opener, 91-63. I think, especially going to Stillwater, this is a real out of the frying pan and into the fire situation, going from Iowa State and everything they do offensively to this Oklahoma State team on the road. Bobby, I wish I had more cheery things to say, but I mean, this is just about as hard of a start to conference play as you could have drawn up for what the Cougs have gotten in their first few Big 12 contests under first-year head coach Matthew Mitchell.
Yeah, man, the thing that blew my mind was when I went over to their stats page. They have 6 players averaging over 10 points per game, and the 7th player is at 9.6. Like, that is an absurd number of players. Like, even deeper than your starting lineup is averaging double digits there. You mentioned most of the players to kind of look out for. Again, we knew that this was a good Big 12 conference in women's basketball. It always has been, and yeah, you're not getting much of a reprieve from the schedule makers. Hopefully, it gets a little bit easier as you kind of go forward.
It almost can't get any harder than this.
Yeah,
To
it
start
really.
the season, you get three top 25 caliber teams, two of whom are away from home. It's a rough start.
It's not fun. That's not a fun start there.
All right, Bobby, that's it for this episode. Take us home, buddy.
All right, well, that is it. We appreciate you guys listening so much. Thank you to everyone who went out to the Texas Bowl. Just a quick little attendance note. I said we would show up and show out. I wanted to see if read, and we got that. So if you are listening to this and you were there, you can tag us in photos on social media. You can find us on social media at SH Podcast. That's PAWDCAST for any first time listeners. If you want to find us on Blue Sky, it is podcast.bsky.social. And if you are 2 days away from completing your year of no social media, congratulations. And you want to give us feedback, you can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you there. And if Sam mentioned we like to throw a subscription to some of our favorite content creators this time of year. If you feel so inclined and feel we are the ones who deserve it, for as little as $5 a month, you can get our premium content, which we are actually going to record right after this for any premium listeners. Just know that we put in that work to give you that premium content. We appreciate your support no matter what. We'll always have a free feed, but if you want a little bit extra free Cougar talk, you can get it for as little as $5 a month. If you want to give us more than that, if you are a sovereign wealth fund looking to break into the college football game without getting into NIL, we would love to help you with that. But all jokes aside, we appreciate you guys so much. It is the end of the year. We appreciate you guys listening and sticking with us through 2025. So, Sam, I think that's it. And after a really big week of Cougar sports, what do we always say?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!